Hey everyone. Today I'm joined by Matt Kime, who's a certified defense acquisition professional with extensive experience in operational contracting, international defense programs, and naval special warfare procurement. He's supported major efforts from standing up the ONR office in Prague to managing F-16 upgrades in Korea and overseeing SOF maritime contracts at Applied Research Solutions. Welcome to the show, sir, and excited to talk to you.
Good evening. I'm happy to be here.
And I'll let you give a little better introduction. Where you come from, what you do, what's your journey?
Okay, a great intro, by the way, Danny, and you got my name, pronounced my name correctly. You're already ahead of 90% of the people I work with. So, how did I end up in contracting and tech? I'm originally from Iowa, and I went to the University of Iowa on a ROTC scholarship. My goal was to make a career of the Army, and once I got into the Army, I had no idea that I was going to end up in tech, and I had no idea where it was going to take me afterwards. So in the Army, I ended up in this what's called the acquisition career field. I was acquisition corps officer, and that was kind of about year 10 while I was in the Army. It was a functional area. And I got this very unusual assignment. It was to the United States Embassy in Prague, Czech Republic. It was unusual in that I didn't really know much about the position, and it was like really hard to get. But I got this assignment, and then once I got into the assignment, that's kind of where my journey with tech began. So my job was I was an international armaments cooperation officer, and it's just a big title. But in reality, what I was doing is I was working with universities in the Czech Republic and some other universities in the Central European region for basic and applied scientific research. So basically, to sum that up, what I was doing was I would go in as the government guy. I would say, hey, this is very interesting technology or what you're working on in your lab. Here's some money from Uncle Sam. We're going to pay you. You give us all the data, and in return, you get to keep the IP rights. And then what Uncle Sam does with your basic scientific data, well, we're not going to tell you what that is, but we're going to use it then in our own DoD research labs. So that's kind of what I was. I was just giving money to universities to work on things, and some of the more interesting technologies we were working on were actually things that exist today. So if you look at the news and you see, like, for example, drone warfare in the Ukraine-Russia war and some of these other things, that was stuff was all in the lab back in the early 2000s, and it was kind of scattered around with different universities in Europe and then a couple universities here in America. So that technology has existed. It's just at the time, the technology wasn't mature enough, and whatever circumstances in the world didn't really justify, you know, fielding that technology to a military force. Like, for example, drone swarms and all that. I'll give you a really brief story, and then we'll get on track here. So there was this technology in the Czech Republic, and actually you can still Google it. The name's open source. It's called Agent Fly, and that had to do with drone swarms and avoiding aerial collision, airspace deconfliction, where you could fly a drone swarm and then it would negotiate with itself in order to decide, you go left, I go right, you land, I stay in the air and hover. It was collision avoidance. Going way back, and I learned this once I got into the position. But this type of and I know some of you are really tech savvy, and I'm not a tech savvy guy. I just got lucky that I got into it. But you'll see that, like, autonomous agents, it's kind of a subset with AI, and then you've got machine learning. You have autonomous agents, so it's just a subset of all of that. But it originally got started, I was told, in like 1995. It was a cooperation project between the United States and then post-Soviet Russia. Well, the cooperation kind of dried up by the late 90s, And so at the time, it was, I want to say, the Air Force Research Laboratory. Then they started casting about Europe for a new partner, and they happened to stumble into the Czech Technical University in Prague. So that's kind of how that started. Now, why was I doing this? Back in that time, this was what, 2007 to 2010. Ballistic missile defense was a big initiative in the United States. They wanted to put a uh, radar in the Czech Republic and launchers in Poland. I think neither one of those ever happened. The Obama administration, when he got elected, they came in and they kind of canceled that because at least the Czechs couldn't get 101 votes in their parliament to pass it through. But anyway, I tell that story because so I was working on this project with scientific research cooperation, and it was kind of a subset of that initiative. And I'm kind of proud to say that that effort succeeded. And when missile defense, at least in that part of the world, went away, my project endured, and so I'm pretty thankful for that it still continues today. So that's kind of how I got into it. Now, I love tech, but I got to be the first to tell you that I was never good in math. I was not a science guy. I was none of that. But what thing that's great about the military is that it gives you opportunities to do anything. And I'm a big believer that you can, in the military, you can take a human being, male or female, and you can teach them to do anything. And I got this opportunity, and I wasn't even a math or science guy. But that's kind of, for me at that point, that's kind of where my life changed. It took me on its present trajectory. So, and then after that, I went on to some contracting assignments.
And as much as you can or cannot share
Yeah.
about what you do now, could you expand a little bit more on what you're involved in right now?
Yeah. So what I do now is I am a contract specialist, and I work in undersea programs, the U.S. Special Operations Command. And I really can't expound on that, except what I would say is that for government contracting, the process is all the same. So it's whether, so for example, um, contracting processes are all the same in the sense, for example, I'm going to use a really basic example. Whether you're getting your lawn mowed, you're building a building, or you're building a, you're building some type of vehicle for special operators, or you're building a missile, all the processes are the same. So if you learn the basic processes of government contracting, you can pretty much build or create anything.
Hmm. Okay, interesting. You mentioned drones and a little bit of an evolution of the warfare and how it was
Yeah.
already discussed in the universities back in 2000s. How did at least this part of the uh, military warfare that you're most familiar with, how did it evolve in the past, say, 20 years?
Okay. From so at least from my viewpoint is that there was a lot of this research was around 15, 20 years ago. It just never saw the light of day from the Department of Defense research laboratories. Now, it's not really a criticism, but one of the things, at least that was back then, was that there was no mechanism to get these great new technologies out into a program of record. So they had like certain programs of record that were already in existence. So it was very difficult to bring some type of new technology into it that didn't fit that portfolio. And if it was something completely new, it was just too difficult to go through the whole process just to create a new program based around that. But I would say the biggest thing that has changed is I noticed that the pace of technological developments increased, especially with the war in Ukraine and Russia. And so I think it was just now I'm just speaking as Matt's opinion here, but I think it was a wake up call for a lot of us that we just couldn't go in with our the way with our the way we currently are and expect to win a one sided victory like in a video game. It's just not possible. So I think that in that regard, that spurred a lot of innovation right there, and to bring more capabilities to the warfighter.
What kind of innovations um, have been a result as a result of the war in Ukraine. From what I understand, one of the biggest you know things that you can take away from it is drone warfare has become much more scalable, and you have drones hitting targets everywhere on the front line in Ukraine. Um, are there any other major takeaways from this war that changed some opinions in the government, or for people like you who are contractors?
Right. So I would say that I can't speak for the government, but I will say one of the things that we used to joke about, especially now going back to when I in my previous work and when I was in uniform in the acquisition corps, we always joked about if you're old enough to remember the movie Terminator and Skynet. Well, we joked about it back then, but actually, the way the technology has evolved, that actually can become a reality. And I think just my view, I think one of the changes I think we're going to see in warfare, and I think it's already happened in Ukraine, I believe, where they did a an assault which was all 100% robotic. They had ground robots and they had drones, and with minimal human involvement. I think that's the future. It's going to be our machines and AI versus someone else's machines and AI. And I think then the key to winning that type of struggle will be who can process information quicker, and who can make a decision quicker. And most importantly, now bringing this discussion back towards acquisition and procurement, it's not so much that if you can push out a contract quickly because you've got some great AI contract writing system. It's how fast can you get that capability into the hands of a warfighter that can actually use it. And I think that is just my opinion at a micro level. That's what's gonna decide great power struggle is who can push capabilities out the quickest to the lowest level, so that they have that capability.
Hmm. And what about AI and the trajectory that this technological development is taking place? Some people might expect generally AI AGI to be to be real and to be developed in the next few decades. And do you have an opinion on um, the impact of better AI on the battlefield and generally in geopolitics, how it will impact the power struggles between nations?
Okay, that's a really big question. So at least the way I look at it is that with AI, you're able to process large amounts of information. So, like, hey, so I'm sure and from the other like general officers and people you've interviewed, um, one thing that's really important is you got to give that commander courses of action. As I think that AI, the real role for AI is in course of action development, so that battle staff can process this large amount of information quickly, so that they can give their boss three or more courses of action. So I think that the real key is just going to be processing the sheer volume of information out there. And I know that there are like some dystopian views out there that AI is going to take over, and I don't share that dystopian view. Actually, I see AI as like a tool, you know, kind of like what the computer is now. Instead of me making my own Excel spreadsheet, I can just ask, for example, I could ask the AI, create me an Excel spreadsheet that I can turn around and edit. So I think it's going to come down to speed and being the ability to process information quickly, and being and after processing that information quickly, getting that information or capability or whatever that end product is going to be, getting that into the hands of the people then who need to, who will have to take action.
Hmm. So just to summarize what you said, processing information and the speed of this processing
Yes.
is going to be the most important factor on the battlefield. But then you have decision makers who have to act on this data that has been processed.
Right. Because a lot of times there's a massive amount of information out there. So for example, that you can gather on your adversary, but you only have a limited amount of time to put it into some type of actionable form or to package it so that your commander, your boss, can make a decision. So in the past, for example, one of the shortcomings was not, the concern that you're going to make a good enough decision because you don't have 100% of the information. You never have 100% of the information 100% of the time. But if you're able to process much more, information at a faster pace, you may not get that 100% solution, but maybe you could get that 80, 90% solution.
One of the things that AI is becoming better at least lately, is not only the way it processes information and can work with data, but also um, having, I don't want to say making decisions, but it's becoming better at thinking and making sense of the information. Let's take a drone as an example that has an AI built into it, and it makes a decision to target a specific objective on the battlefield based on the data that it gets. Um, how much information or decision making will be outsourced to AI versus what's gonna still require a human to uh, make a decision?
Okay. So this is my opinion because I mean the chat may disagree with me here, but I'm of the view uh, that the human will stay in control. At least the human should stay in control because at least in my own experience is like the AI is only as good as the inputs you give it. So if I ask it a bad question, it's going to give me a bad answer. So I think a lot of it is I think the humans will stay in control. I think that where the disparity or the differences are going to come into play is uh, who who or what group who can make better use of it. And I think then that's where the differences or disparities will come into play. And this actually, I don't know, not to go off on a tangent, but another very interesting read is if you look on the internet, the Obama administration, I think it's still out there on the internet, but they wrote a paper on AI. It was like, I want to say in December, it was like in the last months of his administration. But they wrote a really good paper on that, and that was with AI and like let's say like social inequality and disparities, for example. But I think even for what we're talking about, I think that that paper is a good read because it's applicable to what we're talking about. Because I think the advantage is going to go to number one, those who control it, and number two, those who can utilize it more effective than their adversary can. So yes, the short answer. So in a roundabout way, yes, I think that the human's still going to stay in the loop, and the machine's not going to take over. At least just not now. Maybe in the future, but probably not. I don't think in my lifetime the machine's going to take over.
Hmm. And do you think that the fact that we see more artificial intelligence and um, robotics on the battlefield, will it result in less casualties, human wounded and killed in action, or is it not gonna change that aspect of war?
Okay, my view is that no, it's going to make it more destructive, and it's going to expand. It's going to expand the reach of that destruction. This will go off on a quick military history tangent. But what it reminds me of the dynastic. Actually, it reminds me of say like the 18th century in Europe, where you had different like you had You had later you had Napoleon, but you had the different dynastic principalities, and they were fighting these kind of localized wars, but it didn't really upset the system as a whole. I can and with what AI and drones and other related technologies, what I see is you're going to see a small number of actors. It's going to be the exact opposite. They're going to a very something which could be a very localized conflict could upset the whole. So no, short answer is I believe that it's going to become more destructive. But I think actually the armies and the number of combatants is going to get smaller. It's just that the destructive capability that they have is going to get greater.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that makes sense. Appreciate your you sharing this perspective, and stepping a little bit away from warfare.
Hmm.
You mentioned you wanted to discuss your idea that you put on LinkedIn. There is no destination in life's journey. This is a little bit of a philosophical tangent, but do you want to
Sure,
expand on that?
sure. No destination. Okay. So when I was a young guy, I was like in a hurry. It's like, I wanted to. Oh, gee, I was in a hurry. It's like I wanted to get promoted by a certain time. I wanted to make this rank. I wanted to make this assignment, and so forth. And then I wanted to get to this certain point. Well, 20 years, I spent 20 years in the Army, and 20 years went by so fast. And then I get there, and it's kind of like, okay, I accomplished these goals I had. What next? And I'm just here to tell you that there's always new opportunities. And so, for example, when I retired from the Army, I was thinking, what am I going to do next? Am I going to work for the government? Should I become a contractor? So I chose to become a contractor because there were so many new things I wanted to try. I wanted to, for example, I'd had an assignment with the Army Corps of Engineers when I was still in uniform, and we are doing construction. I enjoyed that. And I became a contractor, and it was a little bit away from my main career field, but it's like, I want to build a skiff. And I actually had the opportunity to build a skiff and some other things. And it's like, I think it would be cool to, work with aircraft. And I was blessed. I got the opportunity to work with the F-16 aircraft in Korea. So there's an abundance of opportunities. So you're in a hurry you want to get things done and you want to get to a certain point and you want to say, "Hey, I'm successful because I made this point." Well, but once you've accomplished your goal or you've gotten there, you're in this situation. Well, what do you want to do next? And there's so many opportunities out there. And I know that, like, when I started out as a young officer in the Army, I had no idea that I would even have these opportunities or the things I'm doing today. I couldn't even imagine it. And there's so many more possibilities, and I think the future is exciting because there's so many things you can do, and a lot of times you don't know what's out there, what new things are out there until you've gotten to a certain point and you've done other things, and life will take you in directions you can't even imagine.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great perspective and a great philosophy and a great way to look at it. Appreciate it. Um, as the last part of the show, and I see the sun is going down for you and me. Florida sun is, and I live a little bit to the west, but um, didn't think a lot about lighting before starting. But yeah, as the last topic before we finish, you mentioned a little bit of an advice, but um, what would you tell a 20-year-old young man or a woman who wants to do something to pursue? Maybe it's military, maybe it's something else, maybe it's entrepreneurship or even
Hmm.
defense contracting.
Hmm.
Do you have a piece of advice for them?
Yeah, and so whatever you're doing, you may actually hate what you're doing, where you're currently at. But sometimes if you hate what you're doing or you don't like your job, it doesn't necessarily mean that life's over. I mean, that actually may open opportunities. I'll give you a very, very brief example. I ended up in the contracting career within the acquisition core. I ended up within the contracting career field. I love tech, but then I ended up in the next series of assignments in government contracting. And to be frank, I hated it. It's like this isn't what I wanted to do. This isn't what I want to do with my life. At the time, it's like, I'm whatever 37, 30, going on 38. I'm getting old. This isn't what I want to do with the rest of my life. Well, that kind of ties into with the advice I'm given that life, there is no destination in life, because after several years, because I had that experience in government contracting and I didn't enjoy it at the time, but it turned out to be a great and lucrative experience, because then I was able to take that experience that I hated and I was able to apply it to something that I loved. And then I was able to, and then I've been able to kind of create the path in life that I'm enjoying today. So just because you hate something or you hate what you're doing now doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad for you. So you can actually take something you don't like and you can turn it into a positive. And so that would be the advice that I would give to somebody young. That's what I tell my kids. So there.
Yeah, yeah, and I totally agree with that because I've, in my young career professionally, like in software, like startups, whatever, I saw that a lot where I didn't like what I was doing at the time, but then like a few years later, I'm like, gosh, I'm so glad that I had that experience because now I can apply that to whatever I'm doing now. So that's thank you for sharing that. And thank you for coming to the show today, Matt. It was my pleasure to talk to you and to learn from you a lot of very interesting and honest perspectives, and I definitely appreciate that.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Thank you.